The seatbelt light had just turned off when his phone buzzed. "You've been terminated, effective immediately." The message lit up across the screen like a death sentence, sent from the very CEO he was representing. James sat motionless, staring at the notification mid-flight, 39,000 feet over the Atlantic, still wearing the same suit he'd worn in Tokyo 2 days ago, now on his way to London, with one final stop in New York to close a historic $1.5 billion deal. 3 countries, 3 clients, 1 life-changing pitch. And just like that, it was all gone. The ink hadn't even dried yet. This is the story of James, a top-tier executive with a career on the rise, suddenly betrayed in mid-air while holding together one of the most ambitious deals in company history. You'll witness his sleepless journey across continents, the clients who turned their backs, the secrets buried in company politics, and the moment he confronted the man who ruined everything. Pay close attention. There's a brief quiz at the end asking, "How many times did you hear the name James Sinclair?" It's just for fun. Get it right within 7 days for a chance at our shoutout post. Watching late? Answer anyway. We might still surprise you. Drop a comment, hit like, subscribe now, and turn on the bell for more unbelievable real-life stories that'll have you holding your breath. Now, let's talk about James. The boardroom in Tokyo was minimalist, sleek, and silent, except for the hum of tension. James had just finished a 9-hour negotiation marathon with Shindo Technologies, the first of 3 powerhouses he needed to lock in. Sleep-deprived but razor-sharp, he smiled as their COO reached across the table and said, "We're in. Phase 1, secured." He caught a red-eye to London, powered by espresso shots and adrenaline. By the time he landed, rain streaked across the car window like a smear of time. His second client, an aggressive hedge fund, needed reassurance that Shindo's buy-in was legitimate. James showed them early drafts, data rooms, forecasts. Phase 2. Done. New York was the crown jewel. Locking in Belmont Aerospace would tie the entire $1.5 billion deal together. He knew the CEO, Morgan Firth, personally. They'd had dinner 3 times, joked about their golf swings, even shared a bourbon flight once in Chicago. This was supposed to be a victory lap. But somewhere over the Atlantic, something shifted. James checked his laptop. No red flags, no client emails, nothing unusual. Then came the message. "Your access has been revoked. You're no longer authorized to represent the company." The Wi-Fi was too spotty to get answers. He refreshed Slack. Nothing. Tried the company portal. Denied. He wasn't just locked out, he was erased. His stomach dropped. What he didn't know was that a junior VP, someone he had mentored, had gone behind his back, fed confidential memos to the board, claimed James was making unsanctioned promises to sweeten the deal. And the board believed him. By the time James landed in JFK, Belmont Aerospace had already been briefed. The receptionist wouldn't let him pass the lobby. "You're not on the list," she said, avoiding eye contact. "Can you call Morgan? Just tell him James is here." She didn't move. That night, in a hotel room he had paid for out of pocket, James watched as a CNBC alert flashed on screen. Shindo, Belmont, and Vega Partners back out of $1.5 billion merger after internal shakeup. James didn't move. The television stayed on, its flickering light casting harsh shadows across the sterile hotel room walls. A tray of untouched room service sat on the side table, lukewarm pasta and a glass of water sweating onto a napkin. He hadn't eaten in 18 hours, but his appetite was long gone. His phone buzzed again. Another Slack notification. Except this time, it wasn't a message, just a removal confirmation. "You have been removed from the following channels: number merger strategy, number exec suite, number NTL deals." They were erasing him in real time. James scrolled through his inbox. Hundreds of emails, most unread, some apologetic, many forwarded. But there was one he kept rereading. From Connor Dales. the VP who once begged to be on James's team, the same one who now sat on the other end of this betrayal. "Hey, James. Sorry about how this all played out. I had no idea things would escalate like this. I was just trying to flag a few concerns, not get you removed. Hope you're doing okay." The nerve. James stared at the screen. He'd walked Connor through his first deal, lent him his car when Connor's broke down in LA, helped him prep for the board review that saved his position last fall. And now this? He slammed the laptop shut. The next morning, the skies over Manhattan were washed in pale gray. James sat in a cafe across from Belmont Tower, staring at the building that should have changed his career. It didn't look like a skyscraper anymore. It looked like a tomb. He took out his notebook, the one he used for sensitive notes, handwritten only, and flipped back to a folded page marked Contingency D. James hadn't thought about it in months. It was an old plan, something he drafted back when he suspected the board was getting too comfortable with shortcuts, back when upper management started rewarding loyalty over results. It detailed a private proposal, his proposal, linking Shindo, Belmont, and Vega in a modular joint venture without his employer's involvement. Legally, it was risky. Ethically, it was a gray fog. But strategically, it was airtight. He'd never pitched it. Never even hinted. But he had the documents, the projections, even quiet affirmations from two mid-level directors who knew how fragile the official deal really was. If James chose to, he could go rogue. Not out of revenge, but survival. Later that day, he met with someone he hadn't spoken to in years, Margot Lee, former director of European operations, now consulting independently out of Berlin. She'd left the company 2 years ago after clashing with the same board that just discarded James. They sat in a dim bar near Grand Central, wood-paneled walls absorbing their conversation. "You're not the first they've thrown under the bus," Margot said, sipping a dry martini. "You're just the first with this much at stake." James clenched his jaw. "You heard already?" "Everyone's heard. There's blood in the water. Half the VCs think the deal was fake to boost stock prices. The other half think you pulled something off book." "I didn't. Doesn't matter. You'll never outrun the story they tell first." That hit him hard. Not because it wasn't true, but because he'd seen it before. Once in San Diego, once in Zurich. Stories moved faster than facts, and once the narrative turned, there was no pulling it back. Margot leaned in. "You still have your files?" James hesitated, then nodded. "Good. You'll need them. But listen, if you try to go around them, even privately, they'll bury you. Financially, legally, publicly. You need leverage, not just a plan." James looked down at his drink. It wasn't the plan that scared him. It was how badly he wanted to use it. 3 days passed. James rented a small WeWork suite uptown, quiet and unbranded. He started working through client contacts, not pitching, not proposing, just listening, asking questions. The reactions were colder than expected. Some wouldn't return his calls. Others responded in cryptic legalese. "We are reviewing internal realignments and appreciate your past contributions." One client, from Vega, answered privately, "We were told you were under investigation. That's why we dropped. Something about compliance issues with the Japan office." James's hands shook. That was a lie. There were no compliance issues, unless they fabricated one. On the 4th day, a package arrived at his hotel. No sender listed. Inside, a printed email thread, names redacted, except his. "We need to clean this up. Frame it around James's messaging missteps, blame scheduling inconsistencies, and bury the revised pitch drafts. Connor is aligned. He can leak it to Vega if needed." There it was, black and white. James leaned back against the hotel chair, staring at the wall. They weren't just cutting him out. They were rewriting history. He met with Morgan Firth from Belmont 2 nights later. The meeting wasn't scheduled. It wasn't official. It happened at a jazz bar in Midtown, somewhere private. James had waited for an hour before Morgan arrived, clearly agitated. "I shouldn't be here," Morgan said, sitting down without greeting. James didn't flinch. "You know I didn't tank that deal." "I know you didn't lie to me," Morgan corrected, "but that doesn't mean your company didn't." James slid the printed email across the table. Morgan read it. His brow tightened. Then he looked up. "This doesn't clear you. It just proves they're scared of you." "I don't need clearing," James said. "I need options." Morgan exhaled, setting down the paper like it burned his fingers. "I can't go against the board. We work with your firm on 4 other projects. If I touch this, I burn every bridge I've built in 10 years. James nodded, expected as much. "But," Morgan added, "if someone were to leak this, and I was required to respond publicly, I might say I was misinformed." James didn't smile, but something in his chest unfroze. Back in his hotel room, he stared at the city lights outside, a million windows glowing like fragments of a past life. His phone buzzed again. A new text. No name. "Watch your back. You're not the only one they're watching now." James stared at the message. It was a US number, local. No clue who sent it, but the timing was precise. Someone out there didn't want this war to go quiet. That night, as he got into bed for the first real sleep he'd had in a week, James saw the blinking light on his laptop. A new calendar invite. Subject, private deletion request. From Connor Dales. Time, 7:45 a.m. tomorrow. Location, encrypted Zoom. It wasn't sent to James, it was forwarded by accident. And it was titled, James Sinclair Documents, Final Wipe. James stared at the calendar invite, his heart thudding slow and heavy in his chest. He hovered the cursor over the Details tab, hands suddenly clammy. Final wipe. Not review, not compliance check. Wipe. That meant the internal servers still held fragments of his backup plans, drafts, meeting notes, voice memos recorded at 2 a.m., data he never shared out loud, but didn't dare delete. It also meant they hadn't finished destroying him yet. They were tying loose ends, quietly, clinically. He didn't sleep. Instead, James packed what little he had into his carry-on and checked out of the hotel at 3 a.m., leaving no forwarding address. By dawn, he was in a car heading north toward Westchester, where an old friend, Dr. Elise Hammond, kept a spare guest house. She wasn't part of corporate America. She ran a private behavioral research lab. The kind of person who could look at a room full of suits and tell you who was lying before the coffee even got cold. He hadn't spoken to her in over a year, but Elise owed him. Years ago, when her funding was about to dry up, James had brokered a bridge round with a client who respected her work. It saved her lab, saved her career. Now he needed sanctuary and insight. When Elise opened the door, her hair was still wet from a shower. Her eyes narrowed the second she saw his face. "You look like a man being hunted." James didn't answer. She stepped aside. "Come in." The guest house was small but clean. Minimalist furniture, books stacked in orderly chaos. James sat on the couch while Elise poured coffee. No sugar. She remembered. "I need you to look at this," James said, handing her a printed copy of the invite and the email chain he'd received. She read in silence, then again, slower. "This was meant to intimidate you," she said. "But it's also sloppy. The wrong recipient. The lack of legal flags in the language. They're moving too fast. They think I'm too tired to fight." "Are you?" James didn't answer. Elise dug deeper. She accessed some of her academic contacts who had worked in ethics panels for large corporations. Within an hour, she confirmed what James suspected. There were protocols for document deletion, legal ones, auditable ones. But this meeting, scheduled without oversight, labeled in plain text, and led by a VP instead of legal, meant they weren't wiping just company data. They were wiping evidence. And more than that, they didn't agree on how to do it. Another thread surfaced from an anonymous tip Elise's contact forwarded. Someone on the inside was resisting, quietly. A compliance officer named Lena Holtz had flagged the deletion request as non-compliant and potentially retaliatory in an internal comment. That comment had been marked resolved by Connor Dales. James leaned back, rubbing his temples. They're fighting internally. Elise nodded. And it's getting messy. But they still won't stop, because if this gets out, it won't just destroy my reputation. It'll unravel the whole merger story. Stockholders will ask why the company tanked a $1.5 billion deal to cover a lie. You need a win, Elise said. A small, visible one. Something to force them to react instead of control the narrative. He already had an idea. By noon, James was in a coffee shop downtown, dressed down in a hoodie and ball cap. He opened a private account under a pseudonym and uploaded 3 sanitized documents, timestamps, call logs, and redacted emails showing inconsistencies in the company's internal communications. Then, he sent the link anonymously to a single journalist, Kara Wild, investigative reporter, deep tech, known for exposing quiet corruption in venture-backed spaces. She didn't report rumors, she reported patterns. But he didn't send the full story. Not yet. Just a taste, a breadcrumb. Let them come sniffing. 2 days passed with no word. Then James got an email from Kara herself. One line. You were silenced. I want to hear the full version. Confidentially. He didn't reply. Not yet. Instead, he watched. Because the moment her email landed, something shifted. The company's website updated a press release at 4:12 p.m. that afternoon. Ongoing internal reviews following project realignment. The language was vague, non-committal, defensive, but James knew the signs. They were bracing for something. That night, his phone lit up with a private number. He almost let it go, but something told him to answer. A quiet voice spoke on the other end. James, it's Lena Holtz. I don't have much time. He went still. I saw the Kara Wild leak. I know you didn't send everything, but I need to warn you. They're not just wiping data, they're rebuilding it. What do you mean? They've started generating revised project logs, new memos. They're creating a trail that frames you as volatile, emotionally unstable, even unfit to travel internationally. James laughed, hollow. They're rewriting my personality now? It gets worse. They filed a report with HR claiming you falsified Shindo's intent to sign. They're positioning it as a rogue executive scenario. His hands curled into fists. And Connor? Connor is leading the cleanup team. But it's not just him. There's another player, Nora Fitz, from Risk Management. She's the one pushing the psychological profile angle. He hadn't thought about Nora in months. They'd worked together once in Belgium. She was calculated, never raised her voice, but she held grudges like weapons. They had disagreed over a minor audit once. He hadn't thought it mattered. Apparently, it had. The next morning, James received another message. No text, just a PDF. Subject line, in case you forgot who you're dealing with. He opened it. It was a photo of him, sitting across from Morgan Firth at the jazz bar, clearly taken from outside, through the window. He stared at it for a long time. Not because he was scared, but because now he knew. This wasn't a story about a deal gone wrong. It was about the people who never wanted him to succeed in the first place. People who couldn't afford for him to rise. Because if he did, he'd never need them again. And for the first time since this all began, James made a decision. He wasn't going to play defense anymore. He was going to finish the deal. Without them, sometimes it's not the betrayal that breaks us. It's realizing the people we built everything with were never building with us at all. James didn't lose the deal in that plane. He lost it in the quiet boardrooms where no one ever said his name. in the back channel whispers, in the silence of those who could have spoken, but didn't. But here's what they didn't know. You can strip a man of his title, block his logins, rewrite his story, but you can't erase the truth he carries. And when he finally decides to fight back, not to win, but to be free, that's when the real story begins. If this story moved you, comment where you're watching from and answer the quiz at the end. Get it right within 7 days for a chance at our shoutout post. Watching late? Answer anyway. We might still surprise you. And if you love this kind of emotional story, the next one is already waiting for you. Click the video that will show on your screen soon. We'll meet you there. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and turn on the bell so you never miss what happens next. Quiz. How many times did you hear the name James Sinclair in the story?